Aunt refused to pay for art, accused me of favoritism. Turns out she was lying about her job, committing fraud, and stealing my uncle's identity. I'm 19 and in my second year at a pretty demanding art school. It costs a lot, and while my parents saved up a significant amount, I still have student loans. Getting paid for artwork helps cover materials, books, and living expenses. My goal is to be a professional artist. My dad has two brothers. One is married to my Aunt Lena, and the other is married to my Aunt Beth. About a year ago, Aunt Lena asked if I could paint something for her. Her father had passed away, and she wanted a painting of the view from his favorite spot overlooking the valley. I did an acrylic painting, focusing on the light and the layers of hills. I delivered it to her house. When she unwrapped it, she stood looking at it for a long time without speaking, then tears started running down her face. She gave me a hug. I told her she didn't need to pay me, that her reaction was enough. Aunt Lena isn't wealthy, and the gesture felt right. She wouldn't hear of it. She insisted on paying me and handed me an envelope with $500, which was far more than I would have charged. That money was incredibly helpful during my first year. Around the start of this year, maybe early January, Aunt Beth called me. She mentioned seeing the painting I did for Aunt Lena at her house and said she was impressed. She told me she was starting her own real estate business and asked if I would be interested in creating some designs for her. I remember this conversation clearly. I was looking at my syllabus for the upcoming semester, which was packed. I told her, "Aunt Beth, I'm really flattered you asked. This semester looks intense, though. I'd be happy to discuss it, but realistically, it would take up time I'd usually use for studying or my part-time library job, so I would need to charge for my time and materials." I recall her exact words were something like, "Oh, absolutely, honey. Don't you worry about that part at all. We'll make sure you're taken care of. I'll pay you, of course." She sounded very reassuring. She needed quite a bit: a main logo for the business, a large painting for her new office reception area, a concept design for a mural she wanted on another office wall, a design for car magnets, and potentially some letterhead and business card concepts. Things felt slightly off from our first design discussion. I worked up some initial pencil sketches for the logo and the office painting, just rough ideas to make sure we were heading in a direction she liked. I scanned them and emailed them over. She called me back within an hour. Her tone was sharp. She asked why I was sending her unfinished scribbles and said I was wasting her time. I explained that this was a standard part of the design process, meant to save time and resources by confirming the concept before committing to expensive paints and canvases. I have a text message saved from later that day where I reiterated this, and she replied, "My time setting up this business is just as valuable as your paint. Please just send finished work." I texted back, "Okay, I understand." So I shifted approach. I bought a large canvas and specific oil paints she mentioned liking, earth tones, but with a specific vibrant blue. I spent the next week working on a detailed oil painting, a landscape of the local river bend, which was intended to be the source for her logo and the centerpiece for her office. I took photos and sent them. She texted back, "Looks promising." I spent about $80 on professional packing materials and UPS shipping to send it to her. A few days later, she called. She said she'd received the painting, but it wasn't right. She stated it was too dark and not welcoming, and that she couldn't possibly use it. She sounded agitated and asked why I had wasted time and money sending something she couldn't use. I reminded her that this was why designers typically start with sketches to avoid this exact situation. This time she seemed to agree, saying, Fine, do the sketch thing then." We went back and forth via email and phone calls for the next few weeks. I created new sketches for the logo, incorporating a stylized image of a local landmark she suggested. She approved one. I developed it into a digital file and also provided color variations. I created a detailed colored pencil mock-up for the office mural, showing how it would look on the wall dimensions she provided. I felt these pieces were strong and addressed her feedback. This process took many hours, often late at night after my classes and homework. I started declining invitations from friends to go out on weekends. The cost of materials, specific paint colors, quality paper for the mock-up, and another small canvas for a revised painting idea was adding up. I had spent over $200 on supplies and shipping by this point. I realized I hadn't brought up the payment again since our initial phone call. I made a note to myself to send an initial invoice for the completed logo and mock-up, but got caught up in preparing for midterms. Then, the situation with the car magnets came up. She emailed asking when the magnet designs would be ready. I replied, explaining that designing for print on magnetic material had specific technical requirements. I suggested she take the digital logo file I'd already sent her to a local print shop specializing in vehicle graphics, as they would have the expertise and equipment to format it correctly. I also mentioned that while our school had a printmaking lab, I wasn't trained on magnet production specifically. Her response came via text. "I hired you to handle the branding. I expected a complete service. Are you not able to finish the job?" I didn't respond immediately. I set my phone down and worked on a school assignment for an hour before replying that I had provided the core logo design file, which was the necessary component for the magnet production. A week passed with no communication. Then, yesterday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Aunt Beth. Her tone was bright and friendly at first. She thanked me for the advice about the print shop for the magnets. Apparently, they were helpful. Then she said, "Okay, great. So, the next step is the mural. I'm ready for you to come out and paint it. When can you book your flight?" I held the phone, looking at my calendar. I told her, "Aunt Beth, I have classes straight through the next few months and finals are coming up. Flying out to spend a week or more painting isn't possible right now. Besides, any competent muralist can execute the design from the mock-up I sent you," she insisted. No, I want you to do it. It needs your touch." I decided to explore the possibility, though it seemed unlikely. I spoke with 2 of my professors. They were understanding and said that if I could arrange it, they'd work with me on catching up. I looked up flights from my city to hers. The cheapest round trip I could find was around $450. I called Aunt Beth back later that evening. I explained that I had spoken to my professors and it might be feasible, but the flight cost was $450. There was a pause. Then she said, sounding surprised, "Well, I assumed you'd cover your flight. You'll get to see your family while you're here anyway, right?" I took a breath. "Aunt Beth, I'm sorry, but I absolutely cannot afford a $450 plane ticket right now on top of the materials I've already purchased. Maybe, if you were able to pay me for the logo design and the mural mock-up I've already completed and sent, I could talk to my parents about potentially splitting the flight cost with me." Her voice changed completely. It got loud very quickly. She started talking about the painting I did for Aunt Lena, accusing me of playing favorites because I initially didn't want payment from Lena. She brought up the time it had taken, saying something like, "I needed this branding done in January, and here we are, it's almost April. You've been dragging your feet." I tried to interject, to remind her about our initial agreement regarding payment, but she cut me off. She told me I was being short-sighted. She said things like, "Do you have any idea what having your artwork showcased in my office could do for your career? Hundreds of potential clients will see it. I'm offering you invaluable exposure and real-world experience, which is worth far more than any small fee you think you're owed." I felt my face flush. I said, "Actually, the designs weren't particularly complex. They are similar in scope to projects I did back in high school." Her voice went cold. "Now you're just being insulting. You're questioning my judgment and insulting my business." Then she hung up. That was yesterday. The phone has been silent since. I haven't called her back. I haven't mentioned any of this to my parents or to my Uncle Mark. My main concern now is the potential fallout within the family. Aunt Beth sees my parents and other relatives weekly at church or family dinners. I picture her telling everyone her version, making me sound greedy or unprofessional for expecting payment from family. The artwork itself seems secondary now. I can't afford the flight, so the mural is off the table. But I keep thinking about how this will affect family gatherings and relationships. Where do I even start to address this without causing a bigger problem? Update 1. I spent most of today trying to focus on a challenging perspective drawing assignment, but the phone call kept replaying in my mind. After my last class, I stopped by the office of Professor Miller, who teaches my oil painting course. I explained the situation with Aunt Beth, focusing on the disagreement over payment and the expectation that I work for experience. Professor Miller listened patiently, occasionally nodding. When I finished, she closed the art history book she had opened, stood up, and walked over to her window overlooking the campus green. She said that this type of situation, unfortunately, happens to young artists. She then told me she is good friends with Sarah Jenkins, who works as a licensing and legal affairs advisor for the university, often helping students with copyright and contract issues. Professor Miller picked up her office phone, made a quick call, and scheduled an appointment for me with Ms. Jenkins for tomorrow morning. The next morning, I went to Ms. Jenkins' office in the administration building. It was quiet, with framed prints of student work on the walls. She had a calm, professional demeanor. I explained the entire sequence of events, starting with the initial phone call, the agreement on payment, the difficult work process, and the final conversation about the mural and payment refusal. I showed her the text messages about the sketches and the email exchanges. Ms. Jenkins explained some basics about copyright law, mainly that, as the creator, I own the rights to the artwork unless there's a written agreement transferring those rights, which usually happens upon payment. She confirmed that Aunt Beth currently had no legal right to use the logo, the painting, or the mural design for her business since she hadn't paid for them. Together, we drafted a formal letter. It stated that since no payment had been received and no rights agreement was in place, Aunt Beth was legally required to cease and desist from using any artwork or designs I had provided for her business purposes immediately. We also drafted a separate invoice. It listed the completed items: logo design package, X, office painting, Y, mural design mock-up, Z. We added line items for the documented cost of art materials, A, and the UPS shipping, B. Ms. Jenkins suggested adding an hourly rate for the documented time spent, based on standard freelance rates for student work, but also advised offering a family discount as a gesture of goodwill. We calculated the total, applied a 15% discount, and arrived at a final figure around $2,800. The invoice included payment terms, net 30 days, and stated that upon receipt of payment, a simple rights transfer agreement would be provided, allowing her to use the finished pieces. It also offered the option of discussing a payment plan. I felt a sense of relief having a clear path forward. I went back to my dorm room and carefully attached the cease and desist letter and the invoice as PDFs to an email addressed to Aunt Beth. I wrote a brief, neutral message stating that the attached documents outlined the current situation regarding the commissioned artwork and the necessary steps for resolution. I read it over twice, took a deep breath, and hit send. I tried to put it out of my mind and focus on studying for an upcoming art history exam. About 90 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was tight. "What on earth is going on with you and Aunt Beth? She just called me, absolutely furious, going on about how ungrateful you are and how you're trying to extort money from her." I closed my textbook. I explained the whole story to my mom, starting from the initial agreement to the work process, the refusal to pay, and the letter I had just sent on the advice of the school's legal advisor. I apologized for not telling her sooner, explaining I had hoped to handle it myself without causing family drama. My mom was silent for a moment. Then she let out a long sigh. She told me she wasn't surprised by Aunt Beth's behavior and mentioned that Beth had a history of similar conflicts and manipulative tactics dating back years, even before she married Uncle Mark. My mom said she wished I had called her weeks ago. She would have strongly advised me against doing any work for Beth under any circumstances. She asked if I was okay with her getting involved now. I agreed. Update 2. My mom didn't waste any time. She remembered Aunt Beth mentioning she was setting up her business as a franchisee for a large, well-known national real estate company. Let's call it Apex Realty, not the real name. Mom found the number for the main Apex Realty regional office in our state capital, which oversees the branches in my hometown. She called and asked to speak to the regional manager or someone in charge of agent relations. She explained that she was calling because a family member, representing herself as an Apex agent, had commissioned several $1,000s worth of custom branding materials from her daughter, an art student, and was now refusing payment and communication. The person she spoke with, a Mr. Henderson who identified himself as the senior regional director, sounded confused. He stated that Apex Realty has strict corporate branding guidelines and an exclusive contract with a national graphic design firm for all official agent promotional materials like logos, signs, and magnets. He said individual agents, especially new ones, wouldn't typically be commissioning custom artwork independently. My mom gave him Aunt Beth's full name. Mr. Henderson put her on hold for a few minutes. When he came back, he confirmed that Aunt Beth was not listed as an affiliated agent, franchisee, or even an employee in their system. She wasn't in training, she hadn't signed any agreements, nothing. He expressed serious concern that someone might be using the Apex Realty name and potentially their branding without authorization, mentioning the legal implications. Mom relayed this information to my dad. Dad immediately called his brother, my Uncle Mark. Dad explained what Mom had discovered, that Beth wasn't actually affiliated with Apex Realty as she had claimed. There was a long silence on the phone, Dad told me later. Uncle Mark then told Dad that Beth had used the Apex Realty affiliation to explain several major recent expenses. Specifically, she had purchased a brand new Cadillac Escalade, around $80,000, shortly after getting her real estate license last fall. She had told Uncle Mark that Apex Realty was providing her with special financing or leasing terms for the vehicle as part of her franchise package. She had also apparently told him Apex was subsidizing the rent on her new office space. Hearing that the Apex connection was fabricated, Uncle Mark became alarmed. While still on the phone with my dad, he logged into his online banking and credit report portal. He discovered 2 credit cards opened in his name that he knew nothing about. Both were nearly maxed out, with a combined balance of around $15,000. He suspected Beth had used these cards, opened without his knowledge, to make the down payment on the Escalade. Uncle Mark told my dad this was the breaking point. He said things had been strained for a while, but this combination, lying about the business, the unauthorized use of the Apex name, and the identity theft via the credit cards, was too much. He stated he was contacting divorce attorneys first thing in the morning. Thinking back, something Aunt Beth said during our initial design talks suddenly made sense. When we discussed ideas for her logo and branding, she was strangely insistent that I avoid using any images of yachts or large boats in the designs. Apex Realty's actual logo prominently features a stylized yacht. At the time, I just thought it was an odd aesthetic preference. Now it seems clear she knew she was operating under false pretenses and was trying to avoid creating visual materials that too closely mimicked Apex Realty's official branding, likely fearing it would attract unwanted attention from the real company. Update 3. It seems Aunt Beth was careful about who she told about her supposed Apex Realty connection. Besides Uncle Mark, we haven't found anyone else she explicitly told she was an official franchisee. It appears she hadn't actually conducted any real estate transactions yet, either under her own name or Apex's. The whole Apex franchisee story seems to have been primarily constructed to justify significant spending, the Escalade, the office, to Uncle Mark. Because she doesn't seem to have actively defrauded clients using the Apex name, Apex Realty's corporate legal team concluded they likely don't have grounds for a major lawsuit against her directly. However, Mr. Henderson, the regional director my mom spoke with, took the situation seriously. He filed a formal complaint against Aunt Beth with the state's real estate licensing board, citing potential misrepresentation and unauthorized use of a registered business name. He informed my mom that even if the board doesn't suspend her newly acquired license, Apex Realty has internally blacklisted her. This means no Apex agent in the state will co-broker a deal with her or show her listings. Mr. Henderson estimated that Apex Realty agents are involved in roughly 45% of home sales in my hometown's region. So, her potential business pool has been drastically reduced from the start. Uncle Mark met with a divorce lawyer quickly. The lawyer immediately filed for legal separation, aiming to financially disentangle Mark from Beth as swiftly as possible to prevent further debt accumulation in his name. The lawyer also filed motions requiring Beth to provide a full accounting of all assets and finances related to her business. My uncle specifically asked the lawyer to include the oil painting, logo files, and mural mock-up I created in the list of assets to be addressed or returned. So there's a chance I might get my physical artwork back, even if payment seems unlikely. The lawyer is also advising Uncle Mark on how to proceed regarding the identity theft, whether to file a police report or handle it within the divorce proceedings. A difficult aspect of this is the living situation. Uncle Mark moved out of the house he shared with Aunt Beth almost immediately after discovering the credit card fraud. He's currently staying in the guest room at my parents' house. My dad mentioned that his brother is very quiet, spends a lot of time just sitting on the back porch, and seems completely stunned by the extent of Beth's deception. Dad said Mark actually feels some sense of relief that this came to light now, before Beth could potentially get into deeper financial or legal trouble that could drag him down further. There's no timeline yet for the divorce. It depends on how Beth responds legally. Update 4. Just a few more developments over the past couple of weeks. The State Real Estate Licensing Board has acknowledged receipt of the complaint filed by Apex Realty's regional director. They've initiated a formal review of Aunt Beth's license, but these processes apparently take time, so there's no outcome yet. Uncle Mark's lawyer received a response from Aunt Beth's newly hired attorney. They acknowledged possession of the oil painting and the design files. The return of these items is now part of the ongoing separation negotiations regarding the division of assets. My uncle is prioritizing getting my artwork back for me. Uncle Mark is still at my parents' house, but he seems to be doing a bit better. He started looking at apartment listings online and has been helping my dad with some projects around the house, like repairing the fence. He still doesn't talk much about the situation directly, but he's interacting more during meals. I also had a brief phone call with Aunt Lena. She had heard snippets through the family grapevine and called to check on me. She expressed support, and mentioned how sorry she was about the whole situation, especially for Uncle Mark. It was a short, slightly awkward call, but her reaching out felt supportive. There has been no direct contact from Aunt Beth towards me, my parents, or Uncle Mark since the lawyers got involved. All communication is happening through legal channels. The family dynamic is definitely strained. Large family dinners haven't happened, and communication seems limited to essential updates passed between my dad and Uncle Mark. It feels like everyone is holding their breath, waiting to see how the legal situation unfolds. I'm focusing on finishing my semester strong and trying to put the whole incident behind me, though the artwork return and the licensing board decision are still pending. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My stepmom manipulated my dad into cutting me off by framing me for theft. I crashed their wedding with proof of her lies, and now our family is in chaos. I'm Ava, 26F, and I recently caused some major drama at my dad Mark's 52-man wedding to my stepmother Rachel, 48F. This is a long and complicated story, so bear with me. My mom passed away when I was 8 years old after a long battle with cancer. It was devastating for both me and my dad. For years, it was just the two of us trying to navigate life without her. We became incredibly close during that time. My dad threw himself into his work and raising me, often working long hours to provide for us, but always making sure to be there for my important moments. I have vivid memories of him learning to braid my hair for school, burning countless dinners as he tried to master cooking, and staying up late to help me with science fair projects. He was determined to be both mom and dad to me, and for the most part, he succeeded. We had our struggles, but we always had each other's backs. When I was 17, my dad met Rachel through work. She was a new marketing executive at his company. They started dating about 6 months later. At first, I was cautiously happy for my dad. He seemed lighter, more carefree than he had been in years. But as time went on, I started to get a bad feeling about Rachel. She was always very cold towards me when my dad wasn't around. She would make little digs about how I wasn't really part of their new family. Once, when I was home from college for the summer, I overheard her telling my dad that maybe it was time for me to get my own place so they could start their life together properly. When I confronted her about it, she denied ever saying it and accused me of eavesdropping. Whenever I tried to talk to my dad about Rachel's behavior, she would twist things around to make it seem like I was just being a jealous, difficult daughter. She'd cry and tell my dad how hard she was trying to bond with me, but that I kept pushing her away. It was infuriating because it wasn't true at all. My relationship with my dad became more strained over the years as Rachel drove a wedge between us. She would tell my dad that I was disrespectful to her when he wasn't around. She claimed I was ungrateful for all she did for our family. None of it was true, but my dad always took her side. I remember one particularly hurtful incident when I was 21. I had planned a special father-daughter camping trip for my dad's birthday, just like we used to do when I was little. I spent months planning it, saving up for new camping gear, and even taking time off work. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Rachel surprised my dad with tickets to a luxury spa weekend. When I got upset, she accused me of being selfish and trying to monopolize my dad's time. My dad ended up going to the spa with her, and our camping trip never happened. Things came to a head about 2 months ago. Rachel accused me of stealing an expensive diamond necklace from her jewelry box. I was shocked. I would never do something like that. But Rachel put on a big show of being devastated that I would betray her trust. She cried about how the necklace was a family heirloom from her grandmother. My dad was furious with me. He said he was ashamed of my behavior and that I needed to apologize and return the necklace immediately. I tried to explain that I hadn't taken anything, but neither of them would listen. Rachel kept dramatically sobbing about how hurt she was. My dad told me to get out of his house and not come back until I was ready to admit what I'd done and make amends. I was crushed. I couldn't believe my own father would believe Rachel over me without any proof. For the next couple months, I had no contact with my dad or Rachel. I was hurt and angry that my dad had chosen Rachel over me. I threw myself into my work as a distraction, often staying at the office until late at night because I couldn't stand the silence of my empty apartment. My friends tried to cheer me up, but I felt like I had lost the only real family I had left. Meanwhile, they went ahead with planning their wedding. I wasn't invited, of course. I heard through mutual friends that it was going to be a lavish affair at an expensive vineyard. Apparently, Rachel had insisted on sparing no expense, even though my dad had always been more frugal. It hurt to think of him celebrating without me there. The day before the wedding, I got an unexpected visitor, my stepsister Emma, on 17F. Emma is Rachel's daughter from a previous relationship. We've never been particularly close, but we've always been cordial to each other. Rachel had Emma when she was very young and raised her as a single mom for many years before meeting my dad. Emma looked really upset when she showed up at my apartment. Her eyes were red and puffy like she'd been crying. She told me she had overheard Rachel on the phone with someone, talking about how she had planted the necklace in my bag to frame me. Apparently, Rachel wanted me out of the picture so she could have my dad all to herself. Emma felt guilty for not saying anything sooner, but she had been afraid of her mom's reaction. She told me that Rachel had always been manipulative and controlling, but it had gotten worse since she started dating my dad. Emma said she couldn't stand by and watch Rachel tear our family apart any longer. I was furious when I heard this. Not only had Rachel framed me, but she had manipulated my dad into cutting me out of his life. All those years of little digs and passive-aggressive comments suddenly made sense. Rachel had been playing the long game, slowly isolating my dad from me. Emma begged me to come to the wedding and expose what Rachel had done. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want to cause a scene or hurt my dad any more than he'd already been hurt. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like my dad deserved to know the truth before he married this woman. The next day, I showed up at the wedding venue with Emma just as the ceremony was about to start. There were gasps from the guests when they saw me there in jeans and a t-shirt, a stark contrast to the sea of fancy dresses and suits. Rachel's face turned white when she spotted me walking down the aisle. I marched right up to the altar where my dad and Rachel were standing. My dad looked shocked to see me there. Before he could say anything, I told him everything. How Rachel had framed me for stealing the necklace, how she had been manipulating him for years, and how Emma had overheard her admitting to it all on the phone. Rachel started screeching that I was lying, but Emma stepped up and confirmed my story. She even had a recording on her phone of Rachel's incriminating phone call. My dad looked shell-shocked as he listened to the recording of Rachel laughing about how easy it had been to frame me. The wedding guests were all murmuring in shock. Rachel's family looked mortified. My dad's face was bright red. Whether from anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. He turned to Rachel and asked her if it was true. She burst into tears and started making excuses, but it was clear she had been caught. My dad called off the wedding on the spot. Rachel ran out of the venue, sobbing dramatically, her white dress trailing behind her. The guests were all gossiping excitedly. My dad just stood there looking devastated and humiliated. I felt a little bad for ruining his wedding day, but I also felt like he needed to know the truth before making a huge mistake. Emma thanked me for exposing her mom's lies. She said she was glad she wouldn't have to live with Rachel's manipulation anymore. It's been a week since the wedding disaster. My dad still hasn't reached out to me. I'm not sure if he's angry at me for how I handled things or if he's just processing everything that happened. Part of me feels guilty for humiliating him publicly like that, but another part of me feels like he deserved to face the consequences of choosing Rachel over me all these years. So Reddit, AI Day for exposing my stepmother's lies and affair at my dad's wedding? Should I have found a less dramatic way to tell my dad the truth? I'm conflicted about how I handled things. Update 1. It's been about a month since the wedding fiasco, and I wanted to give an update on the situation. My dad finally reached out to me last week. He asked if we could meet up for coffee to talk things over. I was nervous but agreed to see him. We met at a small cafe near my apartment, neutral ground for both of us. When I saw my dad, I was shocked by his appearance. He looked like he had aged years in just a month. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes hung loosely on his frame, like he had lost a significant amount of weight. He started off by apologizing profusely for not believing me about Rachel. He said he felt like a complete idiot for falling for her manipulation for so long. Apparently, after the wedding, he did some digging and uncovered even more of Rachel's lies. She had been cheating on him with multiple men throughout their relationship. She had also been stealing money from his accounts and running up credit card debt in his name. He discovered she had a gambling addiction and had been using his money to fund it. My dad broke down crying as he told me all of this. It was unsettling to see him so vulnerable. He said he was ashamed that he had chosen Rachel over his own daughter. He begged for my forgiveness and asked if we could try to repair our relationship. Part of me wanted to forgive him right away. Seeing my strong, stoic dad so broken was hard, but another part of me was still angry about how easily he had discarded me. I told him I appreciated his apology, but that I needed time to process everything before I could consider reconciling. We talked for a couple hours, catching up on everything that had happened over the past few months. By the end, things felt a little less tense between us. We agreed to keep in touch and take things slow as we try to rebuild our bond. As for Rachel, she apparently left town shortly after the wedding. No one has heard from her since. My dad said he's working with his lawyer to untangle their finances and protect himself from any more of her schemes. He's also pressing charges for the theft and fraud. Emma has been staying with me since the wedding. She doesn't want anything to do with her mom right now. We've actually grown quite close over the past month. It's nice having a sister to talk to and hang out with. Emma told me more details about life with Rachel over the years. Apparently, Rachel was just as manipulative and emotionally abusive towards Emma as she was towards me. She would constantly put Emma down, criticize her appearance, and compare her unfavorably to other girls her age. Emma said she always felt like she was walking on eggshells around her mom. One particularly horrifying story Emma shared was about her 16th birthday last year. Rachel had promised to throw her a big party with all her friends. Emma was so excited, she spent weeks planning it. The day of the party, Rachel announced she was taking a last-minute trip to Vegas with her friends. She left Emma alone with no party and no explanation. When Emma tried to confront her about it later, Rachel gaslighted her and claimed they had never discussed a party at all. I feel awful that Emma had to deal with that toxic environment for so long. I've been trying my best to boost her confidence and show her what a healthy, supportive relationship looks like. She's really blossomed over the past month away from Rachel's influence. My dad has expressed interest in reconnecting with Emma as well. He feels guilty that he didn't notice how Rachel was treating her. Emma is hesitant, but open to the idea of getting to know my dad better. They've had a few phone calls that seem to have gone well. Overall, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of our little makeshift family. It will take time to heal all the wounds, but I think we're on the right path. I'm proud of myself for standing up to Rachel's lies, even if my methods were a bit dramatic. Sometimes the truth needs to come out, no matter how messy it might be. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and a lot has changed in that time. My relationship with my dad has slowly but steadily improved. We've been meeting up regularly for coffee or dinner to talk things through. He's been going to therapy to work on his issues and has made a lot of progress in understanding how he allowed Rachel to manipulate him for so long. I've opened up to him about how hurt I was by his actions over the years. It hasn't been easy, but I think getting everything out in the open has been healing for both of us. We're not back to where we were before Rachel came into the picture, but I can see us getting there eventually. Last week, we finally went on that camping trip I had planned years ago. It was bittersweet, but also cathartic. We spent hours talking around the campfire, reminiscing about Mom and the good times we had as a family. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my dad back. Emma is still living with me and thriving. She's really come out of her shell these past few months. She joined the school drama club and landed the lead in the spring play. Seeing her confidence grow has been amazing. She's even started talking about college plans, something Rachel had always discouraged. We had a bit of drama last month when Rachel suddenly reappeared. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, demanding to see Emma. She was clearly drunk and became belligerent when I refused to let her in. Rachel started screaming about how we had ruined her life and stolen her family. She threatened to sue for custody of Emma and take her away where we'd never find her. Emma was terrified, hiding in her room while Rachel pounded on the door. I ended up having to call the police to remove Rachel from the property. It was a scary situation, but I'm glad I stood my ground and protected Emma. The officers who responded were very understanding and helped us file a report. Emma was really shaken up by the whole incident. She had nightmares for days afterwards. We've since filed for a restraining order against Rachel to keep her away from both of us. The court hearing is next month, and I'm nervous but hopeful that it will be granted. My dad was furious when he heard about Rachel's antics. He's been looking into legal options to protect Emma from Rachel's potential attempts to regain custody. Emma has made it clear she wants nothing to do with her mother, but we want to make sure all our bases are covered legally. On a brighter note, Emma and I have officially started the process for me to become her legal guardian. It's a big step, but one we're both excited about. Emma says she finally feels like she has a real family with me. The day she asked me if she could call me her sister instead of her stepsister, I cried happy tears. My dad has been supportive of the guardianship process. He's offered to help out financially to make sure Emma has everything she needs. It's nice to see him stepping up and trying to make amends. He's been spending more time with Emma too, taking her to movies and helping her with her college applications. There have been some challenging moments as we all adjust to our new family dynamic. Emma struggled with some abandonment issues after Rachel's reappearance. My dad and I still have moments of tension when old hurts resurface, but we're all committed to making this work and supporting each other. Looking back, I don't regret exposing Rachel's lies at the wedding. As dramatic as it was, it needed to happen. Who knows how much more damage she could have done if she had actually married my dad. I hate that my dad and Emma had to go through so much pain, but I believe we're all stronger for having weathered this storm together. I'm proud of how far we've all come in just a few months. There's still work to be done, but I'm hopeful about the future. We're taking it one day at a time, focusing on healing and rebuilding trust. It's not always easy, but it's worth it to have my family back.